Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. I just received a very touching email from Robert von Bahr of BIS Records advising me that he was no longer with the company, that he had been either removed or he decided to go or something happened. As you may know, BIS was acquired a few months ago by Apple Music, which to many people meant, the moment of doom had arrived. That remains to be seen. It really does. But it was a very, very sweet message. And I want to send my best to Robert. Hi, Robert, who's in his early 80s and who's been not just a luminary of the classical music world, but a friend for decades now. Somebody who I hold in the highest regard for what he's accomplished, but also for who he is as a person. And I wanted to take a moment to give a little tribute to Robert, a shout out to Robert, and also for those of you who are new to classical music, new to the world of classical recordings, especially now that everything is going to be digitized and the look of the product is going to vanish. Poof! We need to I think acknowledge the achievement of Robert von Bahr and his colleagues in the independent label world of classical music. Now, for those of you who don't know what that was, the classical music world, I did a video about classical music labels explained. You can watch it. But in brief, there were major labels, the major, intergalactic, Universal and Warner and RCA and Sony, BMG, these enormous multinational corporations that existed mostly to promote popular music and other kinds of media and had as a teeny tiny pathetic sliver of their business classical music too, which because they were so big, even the teeny tiny sliver was in classical music terms enormous. They had a lot of the top artists signed to them exclusively. They had a lot of the market sewn up, but there was still a massive pressure in the industry because there were so many good artists and wonderful ensembles and so much repertoire that we didn't know, some of which was local, some of which, was out there by major composers, just tons and tons of stuff, work to be done. And that portion of the market, which was a sliver of a sliver, was taken up by the independent labels. How they did it, that's a story. Somebody should write a book. They really should. How they got financing, how they managed to do as much as they did. And one of the great independent labels of the second half of the 20th century, or the last quarter, really, of the 20th century, was BIS from Sweden. It was the brainchild of Robert von Bahr, and he had a very simple and direct philosophy, which I think, is a lesson we can all learn, because his absolute honesty and devotion to what he was doing was really, really the stuff of legend. It really was. He would not delete recordings once he made them, unlike major labels who just put something out. It would be gone 15 minutes later. Then the next flavor of the month artist would do something. Then they'd reissue things cheap and whatnot. No, he didn't do it that way. He believed in his product. He kept everything in print. He followed his artists. He stuck with his artists no matter what, no matter how strange they got, Osmo Venska. But he stuck with them, which was entirely admirable, and found a way to create a legacy which is simply extraordinary. And rather than just talking about it in a whiffly kind of way, I have here a small sample of BIS stuff that I want to talk about. I'm just going to go through as a tribute, oh my God, as a tribute to Robert von Bahr's vision and his achievements, its fulfillment in this unbelievable catalog of containing a couple of thousand plus, more thousands and thousands of recordings, an astonishing number of which are extraordinary. They really are. So let's just look at these and sort of talk about his vision and how the label developed by by what it did, not theoretically. So we're starting, and these are random. I mean, I just pull these out. There are many BIS boxes that I can just reach up and grab anytime. Mendelssohn. I mean, Mendelssohn, everybody does Mendelssohn, right? But we have here the complete symphonies, concertos, and string symphonies. All of it in a box. These were originally issued separately. But the point is that even when Robert did standard repertoire or famous composers, he put his own slant on them. You don't get many Mendelssohn symphony cycles with the string symphonies included. I mean, now with everything boxed up, there's more of them. But he was one of the first labels to do the complete string symphonies in modern digital sound. It's with Lev Marquez. It's fabulous performances. A superb symphony cycle with the Bergen Philharmonic under Andrew Litton. All these concertos with a wonderful lineup of soloists, many of whom came to be associated with the label. We have Isabel van Keulen, Ronald Brautigam, Roland Pontinen, and Löwe Dervinger, piano with the Amsterdam Sinfonietta again under Lev Marquez. These are first-class performances, and always in superb sound. When BIS was in charge of the actual recording sessions. They weren't always. Sometimes they licensed material or they got it, they have projects ready made. But when they made the recordings, you knew that the sound was going to be just top notch. And so, there's one little box. It just shows in basic repertoire how he could do something special. And he sold these at very good price because in addition to being an absolute visionary in the world of music, von Bahr is without doubt one of the cheapest human beings you will ever meet in your life. And I say that in the best possible, most heartwarming way. I mean, the guy was, the stories of von Bahr are legendary, of his thriftiness. Let's put it that way. His reuse of scrap paper and making his family buy ketchup to bring through customs and all kinds of stuff. You have no idea what he did. And so he believed in value for money. Let's put it that way, which served all of us very, very well. It certainly did. So there's that. So we put this over there, I think. Then we go, Beethoven. Well, his Beethoven cycle with Osmo Venska and the Minnesota Orchestra. Now, this is the most telling example of Robert's willingness to stand by his artists. I mean, did we need another Beethoven cycle? Not really. Venska has since turned out to be like the micromanager from hell in some of his Mahler recordings and his lousy Minnesota Sibelius stuff and whatnot. Things happened. But at this point, he was marvelous. And he turned in a sensational Beethoven cycle. He really did. And so there that is. And sticking with Beethoven, one of the artists who he's always stuck by and who has done him proud is Ronald Brautigam. And here he is doing the complete Beethoven piano sonatas and the complete everything else for piano, the small works and variations and things like that, on a forte piano. And Brautigam is an amazing artist. He's a wonderful, wonderful keyboardist. I call him a pianist. I mean, he can play regular piano very well, too. But his forte piano recordings of Beethoven and Haydn and Mozart are really first class, as good as anything out there, and probably the best in the period instrument world. And Robert von Bahr has been with him for a very long ride, and he has stayed with Robert von Bahr, which, of course, was a very smart thing to do because some artists, Myung-Hwan Chung, who started out on BIS, Nimi Yarvi, started out on BIS, jumped ship. Some of them have had very fine careers since they jumped ship, but you could argue that most of them did their best work when they were still with von Bahr and BIS, and especially in unusual and interesting repertoire, which you wouldn't find on major labels. So there's that. Then we have, speaking of interesting repertoire, maybe this will be Robert's swan song in BIS, the completion of his Alan Pedersen complete works box, a labor of love if ever there was one, because this is music that's never going to be popular, and which is important and worthy. It's not just important because it's like historical or something. It's important because there's wonderful, wonderful music here of extreme intensity and challenging difficulty for listeners, some anyway. But here it is, the complete edition that just came out last year. So thank God that was there. Then we've got, let's see, of course, his Bach edition with the Bach Collegium Japan and Masaki Suzuki. This is another example of Funbar's complete openness to quality. Just quality, wherever he could find it, When he started doing this, I remember the announcement, I'm doing the complete Bach cantatas in Japan. And everyone went, hey, what do you mean you're doing it in Japan? Oh, my goodness, those cold Asian Japanese people who don't understand Western music. I mean, the racism came flying out. It was ridiculous. And Funbar just said, listen to it. You'll be surprised. This is the complete secular cantatas. Since that time, he's released, the complete Bach vocal works. They accomplished an amazing amount of stuff, and also the Brandenburg concertos, and the Suzuki was doing keyboard stuff and organ music, and practically a one-man Bachathon there, and the quality is second to none. Absolutely first class all the way through. And, and Funbar just said, listen without prejudice, because it's top quality stuff. And his label meant something. BIS came to stand for quality. We were willing to go where he led us because we had trust and faith in his discernment. And boy, oh boy, did he lead us on a wild ride for some of these things. Another thing I would point out is that BIS had a characteristic look. I mean, so many labels, they put things out. You don't even know what label it's on. You have these little tiny CD things and they're stuck in their sleeve. And the BIS look is black, just plain black. Everything was black. It's simple black spine, simple black covers, as inexpensive as possible, but with the look of quality and the look of a brand. I mean, he really created a brand. It's so important. I mean, I was talking to him. If I talked to Wilma Cozart Fine from Mercury Living Presence, she would tell you the same thing. We had a brand. We had an identity. And Robert Funbar had an identity. He was the identity. It's a very interesting question to see where the label is going to go without him to lead it. I mean, he had been, giving up certain administrative responsibilities for a while. He had his colleagues who did recordings and produced things and whatnot, and they were wonderful. But, it was his vision. Here's a typical example. Schnittke, the complete symphonies. It's still the only complete Schnittke symphony cycle. Some of you might say, thank God there's only one, because his music went from difficult and crazy to bleak and difficult and crazy. Some of it is really a challenge, but here it all is. Symphonies 0 through 9. A wonderful set. And here is the in BIS black. Basic black. It was so easy to find BIS CDs until they decided to become ecological, and they gave up jewel boxes and put things in those crappy paper sleeves that now you can't even find because they're so thin. But everyone's going that way. So, oh well, what can you do? But still, he has a look. He has a brand, and it was something where you could very easily go by and see, just that black thing in the middle of all the other stuff, and that was the BIS recording. Easy to find and of course wonderful to listen to. He sent me with his email a photo of his new digs where he's set things up. His awards that he won, many at the Cannes Classical Awards, and this enormous black shelf of BIS recordings, none of which were out of print. Really, really, an imposing picture. It really is. So after that, let's see what else have we got here. Let's just keep going. The Sibelius edition. I mean, who would have thunk, right? I mean, Funbar said, okay, I'm going to record every scrap of music that Sibelius wrote. Every scrap, every shred, every little sniglet. And he did. This is the letter J for Jean, as in Jean Sibelius. Actually, there are some things that were outside of this edition because they kept finding stuff. But yeah, what an amazing achievement. The first complete Sibelius edition. And it didn't come from a major label. It came from an independent label with independent vision and the enthusiastic support of music lovers and the musical establishment. And of course, let's not forget the incredibly subsidized performing arts universe in Scandinavia, which made a lot of what BIS did possible. The fact that you were able to get funding and support for these projects is, it's critical, absolutely critical, because it wasn't like he was getting rich on this stuff. He wasn't going to make a fortune. But now we have it. Now we have everything Sibelius wrote, and it's done. And it doesn't look like anyone else has any interest in doing it again. So it's a landmark. And I really hope that Apple or whoever's taking over appreciates the landmark value of so much of what he did. And in particular, with respect to repertoire, unusual repertoire or unique repertoire that BIS has that nobody else has, and just keeps it available. I don't, whether it's physical product or whether they stream it, they have to keep it available. Here's another example of sort of a quiet project on the side. It wasn't getting a lot of fanfare, but it was marvelous, and it had many, many volumes. This was Nikos Skalkatis, the Greek composer. Here are his 36 Greek dances. If you don't have this, you must listen to it. Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, Skalkatis wrote atonal music. He was a Schoenbergian, dodecaphonist, but also sort of Greek nationalist stuff. He was a romantic nationalist also at the same time. So you're going to hear things you like and things that make you run away screaming. But boy, the 36 Greek dances are wonderful, and there was no quality performance of the whole set until this showed up. And it's still the only one in town. There are many versions of individual dances and little groups of them, but this is the whole enchilada in stunning sound. It's phenomenal and wonderful and tremendous, and my tower of CDs there is going to collapse. Look at this one, Villa-Lobos. Yay! Yay, the complete choros and the complete Bachianas Brasileiras. This is hands down the best Villa-Lobos set you'll ever hear in your life, with the Sao Paulo Symphony under John Neschling for the most part, and Robert Minchuk in the Bachianas Brasileiras, and also the complete solo guitar music with Anders Mjolin. It's all here in this wonderful little box. It's got, how many CDs? Let's see, it's BIS numbers 1830/32. That doesn't have anything to do with how many discs are in here. 7 discs for the price of 3. It's a great deal. But BIS also has catalog numbers that actually reflect what number these things were. Like they start with number 1 and they end with like number, I don't know where they are now, 2000 and something probably. I have no clue. But you could always know where you were in the history of BIS by looking at the catalog number instead of it being some sort of strange concatenation of meaningless numbers and letters. Yeah, this is amazing stuff. And again, I mean, here he is, this small independent label, and he's going to Brazil, and he's in Japan, and he's like all over the universe. He was in Malaysia doing Dvorak. I mean, it was phenomenal. First of all, to be able to take advantage of the extraordinary explosion of musical talent. The conservatories churning out first-rate musicians, everybody putting together orchestras, soloists galore. I mean, Robert even married a couple flutists. They just were so thick on the field. You could pick and choose what you wanted. But really, it's amazing. Just amazing how many phenomenal artists there were out there. And Robert von Bahr was smart enough and cagey enough to find ways to allow them to appear on records and to select them very, very carefully. And wow, I mean, it's just such a legacy. So here we have another Andrew Litton thing, his Prokofiev Symphony Cycle, which is also excellent. It's first class, except for the lack of tam-tam and the coda of the first movement of the Fifth Symphony. But really, it's first rate. The Sixth is amazing. And you've got the Scythian Suite, and Lieutenant Kijé, and the Love for Three Oranges, and Romeo and Juliet suites, and all this other stuff with the Bergen Philharmonic in splendiferous sound. Absolutely beautiful. So there's that. And last but certainly not least, with cat hair. Lord. Oh, my goodness. I have my moist thing here. I can wipe off. There we go. That's better. You always got to keep a damp rag. You collect CDs, right? You collectors out there. Hombo, the complete symphonies. This is phenomenal. Humbo is the great Danish symphonist after Nielsen. He wrote, I don't know how many symphonies are there in here. This is 6 CDs for the price of 4, by the way. Of course, getting it out of the box will be another one of those. I do it this way. There we go. Just unplug this, pull this out. 13. There are really 14 symphonies, because there's like 13 numbered ones, and then there's the Symphonia in Memoriam. So yeah, it's 14 of them. And one of the things that's so wonderful about this is that he got there in time. In other words, Humbo was still alive when this started, and he was so touched that they were doing a complete cycle that he wrote a couple more for inclusion in this particular set. Amazing, wonderful. It shows you how a label can participate in the growth and evolution of our classical culture and history. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And so that's just the merest sample of what Robert von Bahr and BIS accomplished over the past couple of decades. It's amazing. It's amazing. And, the world of classical music was small. It really was. I mean, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, we all used to get together at the MIDEM convention in Cannes, France, where I ran the Cannes Classical Awards for many years. And everybody knew each other. It was a small world. There was a collegiality about it. It was nice. It was really a good time. There was a sense of discovery. Everybody was clawing for money. The world was changing constantly. No one gave a damn about classical music. We were all very defensive and kind of, cliquish. We all sort of stuck together because whether we liked it or didn't like it or whatever we did, we always had that feeling that we were in it together. And Robert von Bahr was he was the glue, one of those people who was holding it all in the palm of his hand, keeping us all focused on what really mattered. And I will say another thing is that he never had issues, well, maybe one or two, with getting a bad review. He just wanted the publicity. He wanted the attention. He wanted recognition for what he had achieved, which is, stunning, even though and he understood that not everyone was going to like everything and that didn't matter because you just moved forward. And so now in his early 80s, he has been, I think, sort of forced into an early retirement because he had no plans to stop. And I can understand why this may have happened, because somebody who is so passionate about what he does and so iconoclastic, the way he does it, was probably not going to squelch into the corporate whatever the heck it is of Apple, where everybody, sits around on their computers with their little name tags. I don't know what they do there. I have no idea. But the fact of the matter is, and I don't want to talk about Robert in the past tense because he's still very much with us, and hopefully will be for a very, very long time. Who knows? He may have a few more tricks up his sleeve, I can't even begin to predict what's going to happen. But he was one of the great, and is, and remains, I want to say was, one of the great personalities in the world of classical music, one of the great visionaries, and one of the great masters of classical music recording. So you should know who he is, and give him a little love accordingly. I certainly do, and I feel honored to count him as a friend. So here's to you, Robert, to another 80 some odd years of achievement, and stay in touch, please. Keep on listening, friends, especially to your BIS recordings. Take care.